What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 predictions. The Michigan State Spartans are up next. Let's take a look at some of the other predictions for Michigan State. The FPI is pretty high on this team. Actually has them around 7 and 5, 6.9 and 5.1. Doesn't really give them any chance to win the division, but still 7 and 5, coming off of a 5 and 7 year is pretty good. Athlon, they've got them at 6 and 6, barely making it to a bowl game. But if you look in that magazine, they actually published it, or they did their write-up about Michigan State before Peyton Thorne and Keon Coleman transferred. And that was one of the big things they talk about in their rundown of Michigan State. It's how they have Peyton Thorne back at quarterback, Keon Coleman back at wide receiver. So I wonder if they would drop that maybe to 5 and 7 if they had done it after those guys transferred. The over/under is at 5.5. So 5 and 7, 6 and 6 seems to be right about where this team is expected to be. Again, the FBI is pretty high though, 7 and 5. Remember, it does go back to the last 3 years, and Michigan State's normally better than 5 and 7. They have been the 2 previous years. So let's get into the predictions here. First, my thoughts on Michigan State. I was really high on this team. I thought this team had a chance to be a sleeper team in the Big Ten, not to win the Big Ten, but had a chance to be a surprise team. Let's just put it that way. I really like what they have in the front 7 on defense, defensive line, linebacker positions, both really, really strong. They should have a very good front 7. I think it's going to be tough to run the football against this team. Secondary is still a weakness, though. We've seen that over the last couple of years. It's just been where they have struggled on defense, and I think that continues this year. Offensive line looks pretty good. Jalen Berger back at running back. They're okay at wide receiver, tight end, not a huge area of weakness, but again, having Keon Coleman would have been a huge deal. They'll be, I think, kind of average at those positions. And then it comes down to the quarterback. Now, I guess Noah Kim probably going to be the starter. Don't really know much about him. That's what it's going to come down to. If they get good quarterback play, they'll have a chance to get to a bowl game, have a pretty good year. If they can't throw the football, if the passing game struggles, they're not going to make a bowl game. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Hard to predict that, obviously, and I do think they're going to struggle. So let's get to the schedule here. You see they have Washington in the non-conference. But before that, Central Michigan, Richmond, 2 fairly easy games. So I do think they start off with wins there. I've got them starting off 2-0. But then again, Washington there on September 16th. They get to play them at home this year. Had to go on the road last year. Could be a little bit of a different story this year playing at home, maybe. I'm going to say probably not, though. So the problems here for Michigan State. First, Washington is going to have a very good passing offense. They're going to be able to throw the football. You look at their receivers, it's right there among the best wide receiver group in all of college football. And so I think that's going to be a problem for the Michigan State secondary. I think they struggle there. And then offensively for Michigan State, I don't think they're going to be able to win a shootout. They're not going to be able to score a lot of points. This is a bad matchup. I just don't see Michigan State hanging around in this game really at all. Even at home, maybe the home field advantage keeps them around for a half, but Washington is just going to be a much better team, and I think Michigan State will lose that game and start off 2-1. They get Maryland the next week. Another tough matchup when you look at the passing attack for Maryland. But Maryland, I think, is really going to struggle on defense. I think this is a game where Michigan State's going to be able to run the football, probably slow the game down. I don't know if they can run it as much against Washington's front 7, but maybe against Maryland they can. Slow the game down, playing at home, coming off a tough loss. I think they really focus in, and I think they pull off the upset here over Maryland. I've got them beating Maryland and getting to 3-1. Then you've got Iowa on September the 30th on the road. I don't expect Iowa to score a ton of points in this game because they're not going to be a team that likes to air it out. But I don't know if Michigan State scores. They probably don't get double digits in this game. I mean, Iowa's defense always strong, especially at home. And I just think, I just feel like Michigan State's going to be very one-dimensional on offense. I don't really see them having a great passing attack, and I think that will show up here. Low-scoring game, but I think Iowa does win it at home in a fairly close game. I'm talking maybe Michigan State gets to 10 points, maybe like a 20-10 game, something like that. But again, I do have Iowa winning this game, drops them to 3-2. They get Rutgers the next week on October the 14th on the road. Really big game for Michigan State. You cannot afford to lose this game. You lose this game, you're not going to a bowl game. They have to go on the road to face Rutgers. But the good news is they do get a bye week before this game, and you're not going to go up against a great passing attack in Rutgers either. This is going to be a lower scoring, run the football type game, very similar to the Iowa game. But I think Michigan State does have the talent advantage here. And, you know, Rutgers is not that tough of a place to play. So I think they go on the road and get a big win. I think they beat Rutgers and get to 4-2. But then you get into a pretty tough stretch here on the schedule. The rest of the schedule is tough. Michigan the next week, October 21st, after everything that happened last year in the tunnel and all that. Michigan, I should say, is going to be really fired up for this game. I think they go out and win really, really big. I don't think this game's going to be close at all. Even at Michigan State, even with the rivalry, I just think Michigan is that good. And remember a couple of years ago when Michigan came in there and lost, even though it kind of felt like they were the better team, I think that there is plenty of motivation for Michigan to come in here and win big. So I do think Michigan State will lose that game. That'll probably be their toughest, their biggest loss of the season, if I had to guess. They play Minnesota the next week on October 28th. Pretty even matchup here. I think Minnesota's probably a little bit better of a team, and they're playing at home. I think this one will be close. Another game kind of similar to Iowa and Rutgers, low-scoring defensive battles, but I think Minnesota at home does get this win, drops Michigan State to 4-4. Then you've got Nebraska the next week on November the 4th. Not sure what to expect from Nebraska, but I think it'll be kind of similar to some of these other games, lower-scoring defensive battle. Michigan State playing at home. I think they're pretty desperate after back-to-back losses. I've got Michigan State at home getting a huge win over Nebraska and getting to 5-4, which means they'd be one win away from a bowl game. Next up, you've got Ohio State on the 11th on the road. I said Michigan might be their worst loss. Well, Ohio State might be the worst loss just because of the way Ohio State can score and because of the struggles with the Michigan State secondary that I think are going to continue this year. Your only hope is to try to get pressure on the quarterback and at least maybe take the run game away for Ohio State to at least make this game somewhat competitive, but I just don't see that happening. Ohio State too explosive on offense, a solid defense as well. I don't think this one's close. I think Michigan State gets blown out by Ohio State. I think Michigan and Ohio State probably the two games where Michigan State loses in a blowout. Every other game should be at least somewhat competitive. Indiana on the 18th. On the road for Michigan State. It seems like this game has had some upsets in the past. It's not the easiest game to predict sometimes. I think Indiana's a team that's kind of flying under the radar. I think they're going to be a little better than people expect. I still think they're going to have a rough year just because of the division that they play in. But I think they're due for a big win. I think they will get one big win. I think Michigan State has that one game where they just don't play very well. And I've got them losing here to Indiana. And then they'll close things out with Penn State on the Friday after Thanksgiving at Ford Field. That'll be an interesting scene there. Penn State, maybe they don't have the explosive passing attack to score 60 points in this game. But as good as they are running the football and the balance they'll have on offense, I think that's going to cause a problem for Michigan State. And as good as their defense is, I think Michigan State struggles to score. I think Penn State wins this game by at least a couple of touchdowns. And Michigan State misses out on a bowl game. I've got them going 5-7. I think the Rutgers-Indiana games, I think they split those two games. And maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they lose to Rutgers to beat Indiana. But either way, I've got them at 5-7. And remember, they could very easily lose to Maryland or Nebraska. So 4-8 is even a very real possibility for Michigan State. I think it's going to be very tough for them to get to a bowl game. For them to do it, they've got to win these 5 games and then not slip up against Indiana, which is possible. But I think it's more likely that they go 5-7. So that's my prediction for Michigan State. Give me your thoughts and your predictions down in the comments below.